It's midday in Dakar, 1 p.m. in Lagos. Good afternoon and many thanks for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world on wadr.org. Welcome to Newslink. Here are the top stories. Senegalese citizens and civil society actors admonish peace in the last days of the campaign for the parliamentary elections.
I want to send a message to His Majesty that we can go to the elections peacefully and transparently, and Senegal is our home. We fight for the interests of this country.
The living forces of Guinea mobilized against the junta to respect the December 2024 transition deadline. The Gambian Ministry of Health targets 400,000 children in phase 1 of its polio vaccination program. And COP29 continues in Barcode climate financing, adaptation and justice at the center of deliberations.
The gap between adaptation needs and finance could reach up to $359 billion a year by 2030. And these missing dollars are not abstractions on a balance sheet. They are lives taken, harvests lost, and development denied.
Stay with us for details of these stories and more.
Here is Abdullahi Hassan with Newslink.
Many thanks for joining us and a warm welcome to our listeners in Gambia, Ghana, Liberia and Sierra Leone. We'll begin here in Senegal as civil society actors, religious and traditional leaders as well as statesmen are calling for peace amid the ongoing campaign for the parliamentary elections. Unprecedented events in recent days have resulted in violence, destruction of properties and injuries. As Senegal approaches November 17, the police in a statement on Tuesday announced several arrests and seizure of assault weapons during clashes in St. Louis the previous day. Some 77 individuals are currently in police custody over Monday's violence. But as Imo Edet reports, peace is today the most spoken word from across the country during this crucial moment.
In the wake of the violence, civil society players, media professionals and religious associations in a statement on Tuesday called on political parties to remain calm. Calls for restraint and a peaceful end to the campaign are multiplying across the country in the final hours of the electoral campaign. Such is the case in the kingdom of OSIWA, located in the lower Casamance region of southern Senegal. Lionel Jaja Jeju, spokesman for the king of OSIWA.
I want to send a message to His Majesty that we can go to the elections peacefully and transparently, and that the winners will win on the evening of November 17, and that we can establish peace, solidarity and cohesion, because apart from politics, we will meet again. We come from the same family, and Senegal is our home. We fight for the interests of this country.
After nearly 3 weeks of mobilization in the country's interior, the various coalitions are wrapping up their campaigns in Dakar. In the Senegalese capital, the stakes are high. For Professor Abdurrahman Thiam, a political science lecturer at Dakar's Sheikh Anta Diop University, the leaders of the various coalitions need to raise awareness among their supporters to avoid violence.
You know, the capital is the first electoral issue, because when you win Dakar, you enrage not only 7 deputies who are put in the competition, but also it pulls you up regarding the national list, which means that the nerves are a little tense, but it doesn't have to push some officials to hold certain speeches. So what should be done is a form of socialization of activists. Each candidate must take on his responsibilities, thus raising the awareness of his activists or his supporters.
In a statement on Monday, the Minister of the Interior denounced acts of violence directed against certain caravans. He also called on political parties and coalitions to notify the administrative authorities of their itineraries and travel times at least 24 hours in advance.
More on that with that report. Now, as part of strategic efforts to find solutions to interreligious conflicts and violent extremism in the sub-region, religious leaders have been urged to use their platform to promote peace and social cohesion while creating opportunities that enhance the socio-economic welfare of their members. Speaking at the 16th edition of the Conference of Advocacy for Interreligious Dialogue in Dakar, the German ambassador to Senegal, Sonke Simon, noted that sub-Saharan Africa has lost quite a significant of its labor force to religious conflicts, hence retarding development. He therefore called on religious stakeholders to desist from violence and save humanity. Christopher Teacher was there and now reports.
While many sub-Saharan countries are plagued with underdevelopment and malnutrition among other socio-economic challenges, religious conflict and extremism continue to deepen the woes of the sub-region. Religious insurgency groups such as Boko Haram, Islamic State West Africa Province ISWAP, and Al-Qaeda affiliated group in Mali, among others, have all contributed to crippling the sub-region. To change the narrative and chart the path of progress and development while consolidating the gains made in existing religious tolerance in Senegal and elsewhere in the sub-region, the two-day Conference of Advocacy for Interreligious Dialogue brought together stakeholders to propose lasting solutions to ending interreligious conflict. German ambassador to Senegal, Sonko Siemon, is urging the promotion of peace and social cohesion rather than promoting violence.
I think you have to try to discover what unites the religions, and not what is dividing people. I think that is the necessary. Otherwise, you cannot achieve peace. In fact, most of them are not only active in Senegal, but also in the whole sub-region.
On her part, the country representative of Conrad Adema Stiftan, Caroline Hauptmann, called for the depoliticization of religion.
Religion it's a very personal way to promote their own values. It's a way maybe to hold together the communities. But as soon as it's politicized, well, there's a lot of confusion. It's about the religious communities to rethink the debate.
The president of the Senegalese Islamic Foundation, Imam Sheikh Wali Sek, proposed that mutual respect must be upheld among leaders of various religious bodies. The two-day conference brought together religious actors, academia, civil society, and international partners.
Christopher Aticho with that report. Let's take you to Guinea, where the call for an end to the current transition is fast gathering momentum, with multiple society groups and activists adding their voices. The latest to ring the alarm is the Living Forces of Guinea, which launched its campaign on Tuesday, November 12, 2024. The rally seeks to coordinate actions and mobilize citizens to demand the departure of the military authority and ensure the return to a constitutional order no later than January 1, 2025. Echa Tisu has more.
In a statement, the Living Forces of Guinea asserts that the ruling military is violating its commitments and the principles of the transition charter in place. The group laments the deteriorating political, economic, and social indices that it argues have impacted general security. Other issues underscored in the statement are bad governance, massive human rights abuses, and interference in judicial processes by the junta. The Living Forces stresses that if the military transition drags on, the state of governance will deteriorate, insisting that the transition ends by December 2024. The civil society maintains that General Mamadi Doumbouya's resolve to hold onto power sends a signal to other junta leaders in West Africa to do the same. The group of activists unequivocally alleges Doumbouya's candidacy in future elections in Guinea, which they say contravenes the charter endorsed by the regional bloc ECOWAS after the power grab 3 years ago. For the moment, the transitional government has not yet reacted to this new statement. However, it should be noted, members of the National Transitional Council are on a nationwide campaign to popularize the new draft constitution.
A report by Eche Atisu.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Remember, we are live on wadr.org and on Facebook, WADR English Service. In Côte d'Ivoire, the designation of Pascal Affi N'Guesson as the candidate of the Ivorian Popular Front (FPI) for the next presidential election has not received full approval. In a communication, the party's former Secretary General, Isiaka Sangare, said he did not recognize the 5th Congress of the opposition political party that led to this choice. The leader of the political current Democracy and Values, a faction of the FPI, denounces irregularities and calls on the party's members to join his current platform.
The
8th and 9th November Congress in Yamoussoukro was organized in force and outside all consensus. It is evident that it was one-sided campaign against another. It was only a duplicate and even a parody of the election of the president of the party, given the quality of the participants and the arbitrary decisions that were taken. We do not recognize this Congress, and the illegal decisions taken by illegitimate Congress should be opposed. We have to understand the consequences of what at the end of the day has reached the limit of what the Ivorian people can tolerate. Because when we talk about fragility, the party started becoming fragile since the internal crisis began. Hence, no, we will not take a step back, and we will not accept that democracy is trampled on, and we will not accept that any individual, whatsoever his strength, his ability, can dominate the game and kill the spirit of freedom.
As a reminder, Isiaka Sangare was suspended from the FBI for 5 years after challenging Pascal Affi-N'Guesson's decision to end collaboration with the ruling Rally of Houfetists for Democracy and Peace, RHTP. In Ghana, reactions have been pouring in after the Supreme Court reversed the Speaker of Parliament ruling on the vacant seat saga. The Apex Court on Tuesday, by a 5-2 majority decision, overturned Speaker of Parliament Alban Bambin's ruling from October 17, which declared 4 parliamentary seats vacant. According to the court, the Speaker's action was unconstitutional. Whereas the ruling New Patriotic Party MPP majority in Parliament has welcomed its calling on the Speaker to abide by the court's verdict, the opposition National Democratic Congress (NDC) has criticized it. From Accra, Nadia Tete reports.
In a 5-2 majority decision delivered on Tuesday, November 12, Ghana's Supreme Court ruled that the Speaker of Parliament's declaration of 4 seats as vacant was unconstitutional, effectively restoring the New Patriotic Party's majority in the legislature ahead of the December election. This decision effectively means that the 4 affected MPs have legally retained the seats. The MPs in question are Andrew Amwako Isiama of Fomena in the Ashanti region, Kojo Asante, NPP MP for Suhum in the Eastern region, NPP Cynthia Morrison of Agona West constituency, and the NDC's Peter Yaokwachi Akwa of Amenfi Central constituency in the Western region. Speaking to the media and Parliament, Majority Chief Whip Frank Anodompre argued the decision by 2 justices to dissent means the apex court of the land is truly independent. The Insawame Dredjuri MP further urged the Speaker and the minority in Parliament to respect the verdicts of the Supreme Court.
So our colleagues, we expect them to celebrate with us, and also to celebrate not with us, with the Ghanaian people, that this is democracy. And for the Speaker, with his caliber in wake, I don't expect anything different. So those who say that, what about if he doesn't respect the judgment? I don't think it's an option at all. It cannot be an option for the Speaker to say that I will not respect the judgment of the Apex Court.
The opposition NDC has, however, criticized the judgments by the Apex Court. Abraham Amalaba is a member of the NDC Legal Directorate.
It's a bad ruling and it cannot stand the test of time. We have been taught that in interpretation, you give words their ordinary meaning. And when that leads to absurdity, then you can now give a secondary meaning. When you look at Article 97, 1G and H, it's very clear and does not need any interpretation at all.
Meanwhile, the full reasoning behind the Supreme Court's decision is expected to be released on Wednesday, November 13, 2024. For WADR, Nadidi Tete, Accra.
And to some health news, the Gambia has embarked on a nationwide oral polio vaccination exercise. The first of the campaign, which will last for 3 days ahead of the second phase in December, targets over 400,000 children under the age of 5. Although the Gambia is polio-free, the country deemed it necessary to embark on a campaign after the virus was detected in a sewage line in the greater Banjul area. Sankule Janko tells us more.
In Polyclinic situated in the heart of Banjul, a baby wails after receiving his polio vaccination. His tiny face scrunched in discomfort, but his mother gently rocks him in her arms, offering soothing words. That experience may very well be the same for thousands of mothers as the Gambia embarks on a crucial nationwide polio vaccination campaign, aiming to protect its youngest generation from the viral disease. At this clinic in Banjul, the First Lady of the Gambia, Fatoumata Barbaro, officially launched the campaign.
I want the mothers to be taking their children for child welfare for at least the 5 complete years because they are preventing their children from getting sick.
Health workers armed with vaccines and hope will go from door to door, making sure no child is left behind. Dr. Lamin Samate is the Minister of Health.
We need to immunize our children, the development of polio, which of course in very severe cases could kill, but classically it presents with paralysis and children could grow paralyzed. And we don't want that in our children. That is why we're preventing them against that.
For the next few days, health workers will administer the life-saving drops to children. The ultimate goal is for the Gambia to continue to be polio-free and children guaranteed a safe future.
You are listening to Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM Dakar, Senegal, and live on wadr.org. Here's a reminder of our top stories. Senegalese citizens and civil society actors admonish peace in the last days of the campaign for the parliamentary elections. The living forces of Guinea mobilized against the ruling junta to respect the December 2024 transition deadline. The Gambia Minister of Health targets 400,000 children in phase 1 of its polio vaccination program. Ahead in the news, COP29 continues with climate financing, adaptation and justice at the heart of deliberations. We'll also have the press review, guest interview and sports news. Please stay with us.
Fresh and breaking news all the time. Hear it first as the news breaks, only on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Many thanks for staying with us. COP29 continues this Wednesday in Baku, Azerbaijan. The crucial question of financing is currently at the heart of debate between polluting countries and the countries of the South most affected by the effects of climate change. In West Africa, environmental activists in Baku are calling for a strong consensus to achieve financing targets. They also described the Green Climate Fund, which has been in place for several years, as ineffective. Augustine Colley reports.
Some 100 heads of state, government delegations and climate experts are taking part in COP29, which runs until November 22. For this conference of the parties dubbed COP Finance, the crucial issue of financing adaptation and the fight against climate change in the poorest countries is on the agenda. At the end of the meeting, participants are expected to agree on a new global financial target. Antonio Guterres is the UN Secretary General.
The gap between adaptation needs and finance could reach up to $359 billion a year by 2030. And these missing dollars are not abstractions on a balance sheet. They are lives taken, harvests lost, and development denied. Now more than ever, finance promises must be kept, and developed countries must race the clock to double adaptation finance to at least $40 billion a year by 2025.
Despite the implementation of a green fund for climate change in 2010, the countries of the South are still not safe from the effects of climate change, according to Ahmed Sekou Jallow, president of the Malian Civil Society's Platform for Climate, Environment and Sustainable Development.
I wouldn't say that the green fund is not operational, but what we could say is that it doesn't intervene at the level it should because there are too many conditions. For example, for us French speakers, we have to follow the whole procedure in English, answer raise files in English, and answer questions in English. There are also many of those demands that exist, so it is very, very restrictive.
Still, COP29 aims to deliver on a promise made in 2009 when developed countries pledged to mobilize an average of $100 billion a year between 2020 and 2025. The conference is also an opportunity for countries to start presenting their updated national climate action plans produced as part of the Paris Agreement. Signed in 2015, this Paris Climate Agreement aims to limit global warming to 2 or 1.5 degrees Celsius since 1990. But this goal, in the words of the UN chief, is far from being achieved, not least because of the production of fossil fuels.
Augustine Colley reporting there.
This is the newspaper review. Stay abreast and find out what the top stories are in your country. This is the newspaper review.
The newspaper review.
Well, today's press review takes us to the Gambia for the most talked about events and trending stories on the front pages of the national dailies. Well, one such story is expected 30% pay rise in civil servants' salaries. Sankle Janko has it from here.
Let's begin with the Standard newspaper today, and the lead story on the Standard newspaper reads, Civil servants to get 30% pay rise. That's the lead story on the Standard newspaper with the photo of C.D. Keita, the Minister of Finance and Economic Affairs. 50 million shoot against journalist Keba Ansu starts. Gambia to benefit from 100 million Islamic Bank grant. That is another story on the Standard newspaper. This other one reads, former KMC CEO arrested for allegedly assaulting witness of local government commission. Barrow returns from private visit to Morocco. This other one reads, EU delegation holds talks with Deputy Speaker on electoral reforms. And the final story on the Standard newspaper reads, Russia recruits Gambians, orders to fight in Ukraine, according to a report. Let's move on to the Point newspaper for today. And the lead story on the Point newspaper reads, Journalist Mane case, George urges out of court settlement, with a photo of Keba Ansumane, a journalist for the Alcamba Times, and the Minister of Environment, and that is John Manjang, who has filed a civil lawsuit against Keba Ansumane, claiming $50 million for what he described as defamation of a character. This one reads, ECOWAS 9th GCC meeting underway in Banjul. First Lady launches national polio vaccination campaign. Let's take a look at the final newspaper for today, and that is the Fourier newspaper. And the lead story on the Fourier newspaper reads, George criticizes Minister of Health for failing to appear in AKI case. Task force to work with Special Prosecutor's Office on cases of missing persons. This other one reads, parties open for out-of-court settlement. Commission probes Latrikunda Market pre-finance canteen construction amid discrepancies, and Market Committee chairperson denies approving collection of vendors' payments. I'm afraid these are the major stories making headlines on Gambian dailies, and it's back to you in the studio.
Many thanks, Sankle Janko, for the press review.
Politics,
Analysis on major news,
social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
Our guest this afternoon is Professor Abdurrahman Cham, a lecturer at the Sheikh Anta Diop University, Dakar, who remarks about the 2024 campaign for the parliamentary elections in Senegal. A keen observer of the dynamic Senegalese political arena, Professor Cham acknowledges certain developments in the build-up to Sunday, November 17, which he says are unprecedented.
Sur les points saillants qui m'ont marqué durant ces derniers jours.
The issues that have amazed me during these last few days is, first of all, the mobilizations, political mobilizations. There is also the question of transhumans. It is a phenomenon that developed singularly because political transhumans, as was practiced, was the fact that a political actor left his party to join another party, either for reasons of access to resources, or of allegiance, or access to positions of power, or even to the preservation of positions of power. So that has always been manifested, but we have seen new development by which actors will try to create movement to support the party in power. So these are the new developments that we are seeing at the moment, and some who have been invested in these lists. And I think that also from the point of view of ethics and morality, it is something that does not value the moralization of political life, which we talked a lot about during the 2016 referendum. But above all, violence. So here are the most striking facts that have left a lasting impression on me.
La violence. Donc voilà les faits saillants qui m'ont le plus marqué.
Is the violence observed during this election campaign the first in the history of campaigns for Senegal's legislature?
Ce n'est pas une première, mais c'est un peu spécial.
It's not the first, but it's a bit special because this year we saw politicians openly calling for violence. I think that all these forms of violence must be condemned on all sides. but also to show the irresponsibility of some politicians who call for this violence.
Donc à cette violence.
And would you suggest strengthening security measures in Dakar during these last days of the campaign?
Oui, absolument. Vous savez,
when we know that several coalitions have left the country and the current destination is the Senegalese capital, strong mobilizations are expected. So security in Dakar should be strengthened. Absolutely. The capital is the first electoral issue because when you win, you emerge not only with 7 deputies who compete, but also it pulls you up concerning the national list. And if it is a presidential election, you're almost sure to go to the second round. So you see the stake, which means that the nerves are a little tense, but it does not have to push some officials to alter certain words.
Donc, à tenir certains propos.
Most candidates entrust their security to individuals called Navy. The private security. Are there factors that favor violence in their politics, according to you?
Oui, parfois, mais souvent, ce sont des...
Yes, sometimes, but often these are reactions, so these people are there to ensure a private protection because in some countries, the security of the candidates would be ensured by state security. But it is a form of privatization of the security of the candidates. It is not a first. Often these people react. So what should be done is a form of socialization of the activists. Each candidate must take on his responsibilities by raising the awareness of his activists or his supporters. Because when a candidate passes, I think there is nothing more normal than that. He's going to campaign, he's leaving, you see? So there's no need to whine, to shout at him, whatever. All of these also creates tensions and sometimes reactions.
Cela aussi, ça crée des tensions et parfois des réactions. Oui.
Professor Abdurrahman Cham of the Sheikh Anta Diop University, Dakar. And in the sporting world, countries will file out over the weekend to jostle for places in the qualification for race of the 2025 Africa Cup of Nations, AFCON. The games will be played between Thursday and Tuesday across the continent in the last round of matches. Today's matches include from Group E, Liberia will tackle Togo. In Group G, Chad will lock horns with Sierra Leone, while in Group J, Namibia will take on the indomitable Lions of Cameroon. Meanwhile, Ghana have asked Arsenal midfielder Thomas Partey for potential make-or-break Africa Cup of Nations qualifiers against Angola and Niger, with the first matchday 5 fixtures set for Wednesday. And battle coach Otto Addo refused to disclose why he omitted the 31-year-old who has scored 13 goals in 49 international appearances. And with that, we've come to the end of this edition of Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Mustafa Sek and Mao Jujuv for their technical support. Do interact with us via social media platforms, X, formerly Twitter, Instagram at WADR News, and on Facebook, WADR English Service. Coming up at the bottom of the hour is our flagship gender program 50-50 with Nadiri Tete, to be followed by the second edition of our comprehensive news packet in French, Info Chez Vous, with Alpha Aboubakar. And let me remind you to join me at 2 p.m. for WADR's live debate on Senegal's parliamentary election. We'll be live on radio, social media, and at WADR.org. I'm Abdullahi Hassan. Good afternoon.
And many thanks to you for listening to Newslink via Hot 104.3 FM, Newmi FM 94.0,
Hilltop Radio 104.7 FM,
and Veritas Radio 102.9 in Banjul, the Gambia. We also appreciate our listeners in Liberia via Alternative Youth Radio 98.9 FM, Lofa County.
Radio Kagama 94.5 FM, Nibe County, DCN Radio 91.3 FM, Riverside County, Wakat FM Radio